Hi, Ron here. The purpose of this video is to give you some insights as to how the Babson Pro course is going to give you an edge. A little bit of history. Michael Rada was a student at the University of Vienna, and he went and developed some software for me. But before developing this software, what he did was he did some studies, and he studied what the most successful traders in Vienna, what the successful fund managers had in common. And the only thing he could find that they had in common was my course. And that's because I taught in Vienna way back when. So what happened was he went and, with his brother, who was an engineer, made this software product, and this was the front end for a rather extensive computer program that was supposed to be significantly superior to a product called TradeStation that many people know about. So he made this front end and let me use it, and we use it for charting purposes and stuff like that. It's incredibly accurate. It's really, really nice. So um, so anyway, so what happened was he did this, and over the years he died. Unfortunately, he died very young of cancer. He was around the time he died, he was already a vice president in a company in London, a very, very large hedge fund. He was VP of R&D. Really smart dude. Anyway, so he did this, and life went on, and I went and did some further work with this in this area. And what I did was took these different turning points that he has on here, okay, and these are just kind of arbitrary numbers that he has on here. But what I did was I took these turning points and I said, well, at this point here, certain indicator is true. At this point, another different indicator is true, and on and on and on. And is there a way to really make this really, really simple? And so what I did was I numerically listed these trading signals and got some kind of easy to use numerical system out of it, so that every time I looked at a chart, I wouldn't have to look at a bunch of lines on a chart. All I'd have to do is look at a chart and a series of numbers, and I would instantly know what was true given this much data, for example, which is important because if the theory is what is true at this point in time gives you a very good idea as to what's going to happen next, and we'll show you that in a little bit. So I did that, and then what I did was I contacted people who took the course from me, right? And I said, hey guys, tell you what I will do is I will, if you tell me what it is you use, rather general, doesn't have to be specific, what I will do is I will give you a way of understanding whenever I post a chart that that's true. And see, what we found is that I've got people who use RSI in combination with this. I've got people who use stochastics in combination with this. Another guy does it with Elliott wave. It's just, there's some really interesting and unique ways that people have taken the Andrews techniques and combined them with other things. And so what I was out to do was out to help them in some way and also help myself. And how I was helping myself was to see which ones of these indicators that I was using they were also using. Mind you, they might use it with RSI or stochastics, which I do not use. Okay, and um, it was helpful for them because whenever I posted a chart, and for example, one guy I know in Tasmania, of all interesting places, when he sees the number 2, he knows that a certain indicator that he's very interested is being used and is true at that point. Okay, so let's take a look at this and see how good this, or how this might give you someone an edge. Well, let's see, where do we go? Okay, so See, normally somebody might send out a chart that looks like this and saying, okay, look, Dow just hit 13,000, and which it did at this point in time, right after this, and it's and this is what things look like. And right now, this could be a high, and so here you have prices hitting this line on at this point here, and price on an hourly chart, on a daily chart, and this is an hourly chart. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's not really something to reach a super conclusion with in my mind, but it is possible to do that. Okay. Or somebody could draw a chart in Apple and say, oh, here we have a top in Apple. And yeah, it might be the top. This particular pattern here is one that occurred near the top in gold, and that's easily recognizable with the course lines, and also happened to occur at this particular high in Apple, and right now it's about 4 days from this high, and so we won't know until much further out in time whether or not this was really a very long-term top, right? Okay, so but we can look in the past and say, well, on this day here, when we had this much data, this chart was sent out to the group, and what we did was we sent out the chart, and what we do is we in the Andrews group we sent out this with these numbers here on it, and so my buddy down in Tasmania, when he sees this, says, "Oh, cool! My favorite indicator is on here. Is true, right?" And then somebody else says, "Oh, my favorite indicator is true," and somebody else says, "My favorite indicator is true." Okay, so when they see these particular numbers on here. And so what happens is I look at this chart, and rather than seeing a bunch of spaghetti and numbers, is I see these I see these numbers on here, and this helps me to know that this is a really good place to enter a trade, and it's up we go from here with very, very little risk to the downside. Okay, that's what it does. And you know what happened afterwards? Well, the rest is really history. That was down here, and then remember Dow 13,000 was up in this area here somewhere. Okay, this is an S&P chart. Okay, so how does this impact anyone? Well, when you have an ORE indicator, for example, rather than drawing all these lines out and all that other kind of stuff, it's real easy to just have a certain number represent that the ORE was hit, which has meaning to certain people, and here's where it was hit intraday, and here it was hit intraday, and here it was hit on a daily chart, and things went up from there. But the important part is that rather than seeing a few lines, hopefully, or a bunch of lines looking like spaghetti on a chart, all you really need to do is see a few numbers. Right? And once you have these few numbers representing, then you have a pretty good idea as to what's going to happen next, and act appropriately. So how did we come to this? Well, what happened is we were looking for what was Andrew's way of forecasting ahead of time, and how was it possible for him to give orders to a broker a week ahead of time. That's effectively what he did. He would write this stuff up on a Thursday, and he'd say, okay, I'm going to send it to you by snail mail, and you go ahead and Monday morning read it to your broker, and it'll be good for the week. And so he actually did this. This is what it looked like. So, and his results were rather mind-boggling, really good. So what he did was he would find a chart like this, okay, and he might have one or two more days past it, and he'd say, oh wow, hey, this is a really cool perfect turn, okay, that meets my certain criteria, and it might be criteria 1 and 2 and 3, and so when prices go, and this is the same chart, believe it or not, and this was the high, and so when prices go up here and a couple of days out, then let's say this was a Thursday, he could say, well, look, when prices reach this area over here, a couple more of my indicators are going to be true, and then prices should go down. Okay, so this would be the logical thing in terms of how to reverse engineer what's going on in other people's brains, which not too many people are trained how to do. So so what we did was did a little test, and this was the test. It said, okay, if someone knew that, let's say, this was, if they had the time, let's say it was over here in time, what would they know? Well, they would know that certain things happened up here, and that if prices went up here, certain other indicators would be true. Okay, and then place stops appropriately. So what I did was, as part of this experiment, I went and made a list: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And number 1 was a certain indicator, 2 was another indicator, 3 was another indicator, on and on and on. And then I went to this chart here, and I said, well, you know, at these points here, what's true? And I went and labeled them by the numbers. Okay. And so imagine, if you will, that you're able to simply look at a chart and label things by the numbers as a result of doing a significant analysis. It's not very difficult, actually, drawing certain lines in order to say, yeah, number 2 is true, number 3 is true, number 4 is true. And over here there might be several other things that were true. I just didn't bother with it. So because the assumption is that Andrews found some reaction line or something else that might have found this turn point here. Okay, so imagine if you're able to look at a chart and say, oh yeah, we're over here. When prices are right here and they go up, you're able to say, well, gee, if they come down here, then number 1, 2, 3, 5 is true. And if number 1, 2, 3, 5 is true, then it's up we go for a while. Okay, that's doing it by the numbers, and the whole idea is to keep it objective. And that's the by the numbers theory. Now, does it work in the real world? Let's take a look. Where is this thing? Okay, here we go. Here's one example. Here in October, this is a chart actually sent out with this much data. We have these numbers here. These numbers here represent the analysis that was done here. And I know this was true. And so wrote these numbers here. And I did it in the Andrews course to encourage people to draw some lines and do their analysis. And they might have reached the same conclusion I did. Here was a chart I sent out on MTG back in October, November time frame. Yeah, no, it was a November time frame. Ignore this thing here. Back in 2011. And basically what I had was, this is a weekly chart, and I said, and I wrote these numbers down over here: 7, 1, 2, 4, 7, and AAA with a little star in front, and that has certain meaning to me. And I said was, effectively, when prices come down, if they come down to this little blue line here, look for reversal, because if you get a reversal up, that's the very interesting opportunity, and go from there. So let's see what actually happened. What happened was prices went down to the blue line. Okay, and let's see, that was 256. So what were the prices a few months later? Oh, there we go, 399 after they came down a few months later. Okay, so that's still pretty good. So here was the where those several numbers were true, and this is what things looked like a few months later. Okay, so the objective of one of the things in this course is to enable you to go to a chart and draw some lines, and then be able to come up with the appropriate mathematical numbers that will give them to you. Okay, that would be true at this point here in time. Okay, now can this or is this in a computer program? Of course. But the idea is if a person can do it and understands it, then they can take this kind of a thing to the next level very easily. Okay. Anyway, thank you for your time, and that's what those numbers are all about. Bye.